The ancient mysteries of the world consist of tons of unexplainable ruins, stories, artifacts, you name it. In this video, we'll cover lost ancient treasures, unexplainable stone formations, and a lost city, plus much more. Now, this is technically tier 3 of the ancient mysteries Iceberg V2, but you can jump in at any point and be just fine. Let's get into it right now. I think the best way to start this one is to start with the lost city of the Kalahari. This is just as it sounds. It's the ancient ruins of a lost city in the Kalahari Desert in Africa. If you don't know your African geography too well, the Kalahari Desert is a desert in the southern part of Africa, like in South Africa and a few more countries down there. It's been estimated that this desert spans over 360,000 square miles down there, so that's pretty big. Now, for the city. The existence of this city was theorized by a man named William Leonard Hunt. Now, William Leonard Hunt was kind of a circus entertainer. He was a daredevil, tightrope walker, stuff like that. He was the first white man that crossed the Kalahari Desert on foot. So this guy crossed the desert, and then he was going back on his way up north back to Europe, right? On his return trip, he saw some rock formations that he theorized made up a lost city, like an ancient city. By the way, he went by the pseudonym Guillermo Farini, so if I refer to him as that, that's why. Now, when this guy found these rocks and these stones, they looked like they were expertly carved by a mason. As a result, he wrote down in his little notebook that he thought that this could be the remains of a city or a worship place or something like that. This was in the late 1800s, and since then, there's been over 30 expeditions to find this spot and all this stuff that he saw and wrote about. Nothing has really been discovered since. If you didn't know, Elon Musk himself is South African, and his grandfather actually led some of these expeditions looking for this stuff. It's really a small world. Now, in 1964, this guy named A.J. Clement went on his own expedition down there to try to retrace Farini's true route that he took. Whenever he did this, he stumbled upon some giant stones that were probably what dude was talking about. They were monumental rocks that kind of resemble walls, sort of like the Great Wall of China. He took pictures of this stuff, and everybody that's looked at these pictures so far pretty much thinks that this Farini guy just thought that these giant blocks were building blocks of an ancient city when they're really just rocks. It turns out they are weathered dolerite, which is a type of rock, type of mineral. Apparently, these formations date back 180 million years or something like that. So while there could have been a lost city in Kalahari in that desert, I mean, it's 360,000 square miles and it's hard to travel because it's an average temperature of like 110 degrees. We really don't know. Like every single lost city mystery that we talk about on this channel, there's no proof that any of this ever actually existed. Except Atlantis. The mystery of the mummy from KV55. KV55 is a tomb found in the Valley of Kings in Egypt, which is where a bunch of their pharaohs were buried. Now, KV55 itself is a small tomb, but it has tons of historical evidence and stuff that links it back to the El Amarna family, which is like King Tut and Akhenaten and all of them. It's also got genetic evidence that links it to Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. Some of these say that it could be King Tut's father, because obviously it's not going to be King Tut. We do have his mummy. The leading theory above all is that this mummy belongs to Akhenaten. Some of that genetic evidence also points to it being Tut's father, which has been long speculated that maybe he is his father. Maybe Akhenaten is King Tut's father. Here's the weird part about all of this. Whenever Akhenaten ruled over Egypt, he decided to change both the religion of Egypt and also the capital city. He changed the religion from that polytheistic Egyptian mythology that we always think about, like Ra and Horus and all of those other gods out there, to monotheism under the sun god or sun disk, Aten. It was pretty much Egypt's first attempt at monotheism. Now, as a result of him changing the religion, he decided to change his capital city of Egypt, which was Thebes, because it was highly entrenched in that religion. He decided to change it to a new site. That site was known as El Amarna. In El Amarna, he had his own tomb created for whenever he finally passed away. We have found that, so we know that his tomb is there. It's very likely that he was buried there. So, if he's buried there, then who is this in this K55 that everybody thinks is also Akhenaten? Well, more than likely it's somebody in the family. We just don't know exactly who. There was another ruler within the family that was probably in between the time of Akhenaten and King Tut, but we really don't know. But anyway, his name was Mehrgahr or something like that. He is the most likely culprit of who was in that tomb at KV55. I would say that it was Akhenaten, but it's most likely that he's over here in El Amarna buried. So it's got to be Mehrgahr, right? Here's another weird thing about all this. We can't figure out exactly how old this person was. At first, we thought the mummy was female, and then it went to a young male, and now it's a male up to like 60 years old. We really don't know. Further examinations of this mummy have gone down every like 10 years for a very long time. My personal opinion about this one is that it was probably this guy named Mehrgahr, but there's one other scenario that's possible. It could be that Akhenaten was originally buried over here in El Amarna, and then eventually somebody decided to move his body from his resting place there to KV55 to be with the rest of his family over here in the Valley of Kings. We really just don't know. There are so many cryptic things about ancient Egypt that we will never know, probably because our science is just not that good. We weren't there. Until we get a time machine, who knows? Just real quick, thank you guys for watching this video. It means more to me than you will ever know. If you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button for me. It helps me out a ton. And now, let's get back into it. The Gospel of Judas. This is one of my favorite entries on any iceberg I've ever covered. The Gospel of Judas is quite literally that. It's a Gospel of Judas in the same way that there were the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. We don't know who wrote it, but we do know that it was probably written around 280 AD or so. So actually it was written way after his life and death and way after the other books. So is it really real? Probably not. It's a Gnostic text. This book was quickly rejected as heresy by the early Christian church, and you're about to see why. But this thing was lost for 1700 years before it was found in Egypt again in 1970 or so. All right, so what was in this thing and why was it rejected as heresy? Why was it so bad? Well, it portrayed Judas as a hero. According to this text, Judas was the closest of all of the 12 apostles to Jesus. He was his best friend, and Jesus trusted him to betray him to the Roman soldiers. He knew what was going to happen, so he let it happen and wanted it to happen. You see where this is heresy already, right? Besides this strange retelling of Judas' story as the hero, there were also some weird things incorporated in this text from Gnosticism. Basically, this text states that Jesus reigns from an eon called Barbello. Now, an eon is basically an emanation from the ultimate supreme being that is God, but it's not our God. It's weird. Anyway, this thing sent Jesus, which I guess that's not that far off from, you know, Christ being sent by God, but it's weird. Basically, this one book rewrites all of the New Testament, everything that we know about Jesus and salvation and literally everything. Just everything in Christianity, this challenges it. It's easy to see why this was considered heresy. I really don't believe that Judas was a good guy, was a good person at all. He literally did sell Christ for 30 pieces of silver in both stories. I don't think Jesus was in on that and wanted him to do that and was best friends with him. No, I just don't. That's up to interpretation for you, though. Do you think the Gospel of Judas should actually be included in the Gospels in the New Testament? Let me know what y'all think about this down below in the comments, because I have nobody else to talk to about this, so might as well talk to y'all, right? The Marcahuasi Ruins. The Marcahuasi Ruins are located in the Andes Mountains in Peru, and they supposedly contain vortexes of healing energies. All right, so what exactly are these things? They're geological formations, so basically rocks that look like faces, animals, religious symbols, stuff like that. They're massive carvings in rocks. You can distinctly see something that looks like a human head. There's other stuff in there as well. This place was first investigated in 1922 and then later again in the 1950s by a guy named Daniel Russo. All right, so as I said, this stuff is located in Peru in the Andes Mountains at a plateau that's about 4,000 meters above sea level. This rock is made out of granite for the most part. According to that guy Daniel Russo, who investigated in the 1950s, these ruins were carved by some ancient civilization that was kind of pre-Incan in the area. There are 3 specific faces in these ruins that are given names. There's the African queen, the Egyptian princess, and Toaret. All these names that link this site to like ancient Egypt and Africa are because these people literally believe that the ancient civilization that carved them is linked to ancient Egypt somehow. This pre-Incan civilization, according to these people, was named the Mazma. Apparently they could travel across the world, and that's why they were so linked with ancient Egypt. Where they got this idea, I really don't know, but apparently they even made some kind of biblical link to the Mazma people. So there's that for you. I think the Mazma people themselves should be their own entry on this iceberg, honestly. Now, the Marcahuasi Ruins are also home to a lot of UFO sightings, so I think people are just a little bit crazy down there, maybe. Speaking of crazy, what was that deal about the healing energy down there? Well, apparently there's these vortexes at the ruins that contain this healing power. So what does that even mean? Well, apparently people that are deathly sick or have very bad injuries, stuff like that, can travel to these ruins, to these certain points, and they just magically get better. There's this funny story about this. There's this guy that was paralyzed in a car accident. He decided to hike up the mountain to this vortex, and miraculously he was healed and he could walk again. So how did this paralyzed guy hike up a mountain in the first place? Nobody knows. As my wife would say, I think these people are a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Vitrified Forts. Alright, so throughout the Bronze and Iron Ages, Europeans, specifically in the Scotland area, had these vitrified forts. So what does vitrified mean? Well, it means to convert something to a glass-like substance through heat exposure, most of the time burning something. These forts are found mostly in the Scotland area, and here's the thing, these things have no type of cement or mortar or anything to keep them together. They're stone forts that were literally melted together. Now, obviously, the first thought of archaeologists was that these things were burned by enemies, and that's just what remained. But here's the thing, several experiments were held to see if this was possible or exactly how this would be possible. Researchers built stone forts, and then they interlaced it with like timber and stuff so it would catch on fire all around and sort of try to create that melting effect that these vitrified forts have. They couldn't figure out how to do it. They got them hot enough, but all the forts that they tried collapsed. That suggests that it has to be a controlled burn, and they had to know exactly what they were doing. They would interlace these stone blocks with timber, but also with other combustible materials like peat moss and other stuff like that. And then around that, they would have sand, silt, clay, stuff like that that would kind of keep it together and not let it collapse down. Apparently this was a highly advanced construction method that we just really never would have even thought would be done. Because of that, some people still think that it might have been accidental, like they might not have actually known what they were doing, but they had blacksmith shops inside and stuff like that that just melted the walls, and it was kind of accidental, but it happened. But that's probably not the case. They basically were creating sandstone. This stuff is super tough, and once it's heated like that, it pretty much can't be burned down again. The Scottish people were apparently just on a different level construction wise, because over 70 of these forts have been found in Scotland, but very few have been found literally anywhere else in the world. There's a couple more in Europe, but that's it. These things are just awesome. The mystery of Dighton Rock. So Dighton Rock is a 40-ton boulder that was found in Massachusetts at the small settlement of Dighton, which is now Berkeley, Massachusetts. This massive rock has tons of carvings and engravings on it that date back to 1680 AD or before. It was found by an English colonist named John Danforth in that year, in 1680. Now, there are tons of theories about what these inscriptions are and who did it, but the most common and most likely scenario is one put forth by John Danforth himself. He says that it's most likely a Native American inscription that somebody left all those years ago. I'll put an image on screen now about what the inscriptions actually look like, but here's what he thought they were. He thought that it looked like visitors, probably English colonists or Spanish colonists or somebody, arrived on the coast, and then the Native Americans had a battle with them, and they just inscribed it on this rock. They wrote about it. Like I said, that's very possible and probable for what it was, but some people think that it doesn't actually mean anything at all, that people were just sketching stuff out. Some other theories put forth are that it could have been like Norse explorers, so basically Vikings that landed on that east coast over there and left a note for future generations, or even the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were obviously from Mesopotamia. They kind of emerged from the ancient Canaanites after the late Bronze Age collapse. It's said that they were seafarers and actually traveled everywhere, so it could be possible that they got there and rode on that rock, but probably not. I think I'm going to stick with the Native American theory, but you can let me know what you think down below. Alaric's lost treasure. King Alaric was the king of the Visigoths who decided to invade Rome in the year 410 AD. This was the first sacking of Rome during the imperial days, and it pretty much signified the end of the Western Roman Empire. At least it started it on its downfall. The Visigoths were sort of a coalition of Germanic peoples who banded together to kind of fight Rome, honestly. The thing about King Alaric and the Visigoths in general is that even in this sacking of Rome, they weren't dishonorable people. Yes, they did invade Rome and they took it for themselves, but they didn't like burn down the city. They didn't raze it. They didn't destroy the holy places, any of that. When they sacked the city, they did take a lot of treasure and gold and stuff like that. Now, after all this was over, Alaric and his men pulled back deeper into Italy. As they were marching across the country, he fell ill. He had fever and got really sick. It was probably malaria. Alaric passed away that year in 411 in Cosenza, Italy. Apparently, he was buried with all of his treasure under the riverbed of Busento, which is a tributary river in Italy. Burying somebody under the river was apparently part of the pagan practices of the Gothic people's religion. They literally blocked off the river, diverted it around where they were going to bury this guy, and then after they did that, they allowed the river to flow back over it. After they finished all this manual labor, they had the people that actually did it put to death. These people were most likely servants or slaves, but anyway, they put them to death, so nobody knew exactly where he and all his treasure was buried. So despite the fact that we know pretty much where he was buried, nobody has has ever found this tomb. As a matter of fact, we don't even know exactly what the treasure consists of. Just real quick, I'll read you one resource and what it says the treasure consisted of. It says, imagine a treasure chest with 25 tons of pure gold, 150 tons of silver, precious jewelry, coins, artistic jewelry inside. Apparently, this was the priceless amount of treasure that Alaric gained from the sacking of Rome. Now, if that much is buried with him, how much did the rest of the Visigoth people have? Who knows? He might have actually kept it all. We really don't know. The moral of this story is you should get a metal detector and go search that entire river and try to find this stuff. That's honestly what I'm taking away from it. The Lady of the Spiked Throne. The Lady of the Spiked Throne is an ancient artifact from the Indus Valley civilization that dates all the way back to around 2700 BC. It looks really goofy. It literally looks like a boat made out of a cow. Inside this boat, there's this lady sitting on the spiked throne, and then there's her attendants in front of her. Both the lady and her crew have really weird features about them. Like they have elongated heads, they have weird eyes, it looks like they have beaks. It's really weird stuff. Now this thing wasn't studied until like 2009 or something like that, but it was in private collections up until then. I really don't know the authenticity of this thing. Apparently the guy that first studied it in the early 2000s did some like dating on it, carbon dating, other stuff like that, and determined that it is authentic, but then again, who knows if that's really true or not. It's also theorized by these people that this thing might not be a boat, it might be a chariot. We really don't know either way, but if it's a chariot, it would make more sense. If it is a chariot, it shows that supernatural link that the Hindu people have with like animals and inanimate objects like a cart. It ties all those Hindu traditions and beliefs about animals with the ones about supernatural carts that move like their deities and supreme beings, stuff like that. So this lady in the spiked throne was probably somebody important, and this will be one of the earliest links between Hinduism and the Indus Valley civilization. If you didn't know, the Indus Valley civilization is in like modern day India, Pakistan area. It was way back then when like ancient Egypt was going on. That was when this was popular. Not popular, it was a civilization. This was when people were there. Now in front of this lady on her spiked throne within the artifact, there's these rows of her crewmates. All these crew people are in alternating rows between male and female. The males have turbans and some sort of gown on, and the women are kind of like semi-naked, but they all have really weird facial features like the eyes, the nose, everything's just a little bit off. There are some other reports from other archaeologists that studied the Indus Valley civilization that say that there are figures like this that were found to date all the way back to 2800 and 2700 BC in that time frame. So this really could be real. It could be an authentic thing. It's just kind of weird. Now, as to who this lady actually was, we also don't know. She's probably some sort of goddess or divine being, or maybe just a ruler. We just don't know. There's lots of political and religious symbolism within this thing, so if you're an expert on the Indus Valley civilization, let me know more about that. Krishna's Butterball. This is a fun one. Krishna's Butterball is a massive boulder resting on an incline in a town in India. I'm not even going to pretend that I can pronounce the name of the town because it's kind of long, but anyway, it's literally defying gravity. This boulder is 6 meters high by 5 meters wide and weighs 250 tons. It's inclined right now at an angle of 45 degrees. It's literally defying gravity. There's no good explanation for how this thing sits still, and it's been there for thousands of years. It's been there since at least 600 AD because that's the first recorded attempt at moving the stone, but nobody can actually move it still to this day. All right, so what's the deal with this name, Krishna's Butterball? Krishna was one of the supreme gods in Hinduism. According to the locals of the area and Hinduism in general, Krishna's favorite food was butter. So it was Krishna's favorite food, and as everybody says, it falls from the heavens because it was just so good. So they literally equate this boulder as a giant butter ball that fell down and is resting on this incline. There have been tornadoes, tsunamis, and earthquakes, but still nothing has moved this massive boulder. Now the best explanation that we have of this thing is that it's not actually round. Its center of gravity is actually higher up the incline, so it doesn't like roll down the hill. That plus the friction of it being on this other stone, on this stone incline, makes it not roll down, apparently. It might be a natural formation, or it might be something that somebody thousands of years ago created. We really don't know. I think this thing would be really cool to go and see. I've seen pictures of people like pushing on it, trying to move it and stuff, and they just can't. It's said that somebody actually tied 7 elephants to it and tried to move it like that, and they still couldn't move it. So that thing's pretty awesome. The Mehrgahr wheel amulet. We're staying in the same general vicinity. This time we're in Pakistan. So Mehrgahr is an archaeological site in Pakistan where they found this wheel amulet thing. This thing is basically an early copper spoked wheel or circular object, something like that. It was from the Indus Valley civilization once again. So there's several different reasons this thing's important. First of all, it dates back to like 5000 to 6000 BC, and it was probably a wheel or a circular object used like a wheel, so that's kind of crazy. It could have also been some sort of solar symbol, but I'm gonna go with the wheel. It was in Mehrgahr, which was a farming community, so they would have needed wheels to do everything they did back then. I guess they didn't technically need them because most people didn't figure out about wheels until after this probably, but anyway. Now another important thing about this is it was created using a lost wax casting technique. This was one of the earliest techniques of metallurgy. First, a mold is made with wax. Then that wax is covered with clay and baked until it becomes hard like pottery. Within that hard mold, the melted metal, or copper in this case, would be poured into that mold and it would solidify into what it is now. As I said, this casting technique was very popular early on, transitioning from the Stone Age to the Copper and Bronze Ages. They used it to make stuff like this, but also tools and other artifacts. Now back to the whole wheel thing, the wheel wasn't officially invented until like 4500 BC, so this taking place in like 5000 BC means that these people were ahead of the curve. They weren't much ahead of the curve, but they were ahead of the curve. That is, if you assume this is a wheel and not some sort of solar object or something like that. Now, even if this thing did symbolize a wheel, it's not an actual wheel because it's pretty tiny. It's literally an amulet. That's why it's called the Amulet. Still though, let me know what you think because I think it's really cool if the Indus Valley civilization had wheels before everybody else did. Speaking of having things before everybody else, you need more knowledge of the ancient civilizations of the world before your friends do. You should check out this video linked on screen right here. If you like this one, you'll love that one. It's over 3 hours of ancient mysteries of the world from the first ancient mysteries iceberg. Go check that out now. And in the meantime, I'm gonna be metal detecting on that river in Italy. Till next time, peace.